Hi, I'm Mr. Kangas, and today we're going to talk about Chapter 2, Section 4, Multiplying Integers. While you are working on this section, you're going to face a couple of unique situations that you won't find in Chapter 2, Section 5. The first thing you're going to find is you will eventually get to a point where they will have you multiplying three numbers together. And that's really not as confusing as it may first appear. A lot of people look at this and say, well, I know when I have two negatives, it makes a positive. I know when I have one negative and one positive, I get a negative answer. But what do I do when I have three numbers? Well, when you have three or more numbers in your problem being multiplied, you take it two numbers at a time. You treat it like problems that like the problems we saw back in Chapter 1, Section 2, Order of Operations. You just go from left to right and do all the multiplication two at a time. So you have a negative 5 times a positive 4, so we have different signs. That means we're going to get a negative answer. 5 times 4 is 20. I'm going to drop down the times negative 3. So I have same signs, two negatives, so I know I'm going to get a positive answer, and 20 times 3 is 60. So my answer to this problem would actually be 60. Now the other situation you're going to run into is they're going to start throwing some variables at you, some letters. Now remember, variables are simply ways to represent numbers that we don't know what they are. So we know we're multiplying 3 by something, but we don't know what it is, what it's being multiplied by, so we're representing that number we don't know with an X. Also remember, when a number is next to a letter, it means multiply. So you may end up seeing some problems that look like this. Okay? And you may look at it and go, whoa, that's really confusing, I don't know what to do. But it's actually a lot easier than it looks. Don't be deceived by its looks. Okay? Remember that you can only multiply like terms together. So in this case, we can only multiply the numbers together because they're numbers. We can only multiply x's with other x's, and we can only multiply y's with other y's. Otherwise, you just leave it the same. And also remember that when a number is next to a letter, it means multiply. So really, I could say the problem is 3 times x times negative 5 times 2 times y. And if you remember way back in Chapter 1, Section 4, we talked about the commutative property. The commutative property says when you have all multiplication, you can do it in any order you want. Because obviously I can't multiply 3 by a number I don't know. And I can't multiply 2 by a number that I don't know. But what I can do is 3 times negative 5, which will get me negative 15. Then I still have times x left, times 2, and times y. So I did 3 times the negative 5 here. And down here I'm going to do the negative 15 times the positive 2. And negative 15 times 2 will get me negative 30 times x times y. Now at this point I have nothing left that I can multiply because I can't multiply negative 30 times a number I don't know, and I can't multiply a number that I don't know by another number that I don't know. So at this point you can just take away the multiplication signs and say that your answer is negative 30 xy. So really the shortcut rule here is when you see a bunch of numbers and letters being multiplied together, just multiply the numbers together and slap the letters on the end. The only time you have to do any multiplication with the variables or the letters is when you have two letters that are the same. So for example, if I have 3x times 2y times negative 4x, okay, in this case I have two x's. And remember, when the number is next to the letter or the variable, it means multiply. So technically I could write this problem like this: 3 times x times 2 times y times negative 4 times x. So once again, I'm left with a bunch of letters and a bunch of numbers being multiplied together. So I'm going to start by multiplying the numbers together. I'm going to do 3 times 2. And by doing that, I'll get an answer of 6. And I still have a times x times y times negative 4 times x. And remember, the only reason why I can multiply out of order by not going left to right, the only reason why I can do this in whatever order I want, is because there's all multiplication. If there was any other operation, such as division, addition, or subtraction mixed in here, I wouldn't be able to do this. So the next step I'm going to take is I still have a couple numbers that can be multiplied together, so I'm going to do 6 times negative 4. And that should get me an answer. Since I have a positive and negative, I'm going to get a negative answer. Different signs, negative answer. And 6 times 4 is 24. And now I'm left with x times y times x. So I have two letters that are the same. Those can also be multiplied together. The, the x and the y technically represent different numbers. So I cannot multiply those together, but these two x's represent the same number. These are either like two 3's, they could be two 5's, they could be two 6's, they could be anything of that like that, as long as they're the same number. So technically I can not necessarily multiply them together, but kind of condense them and simplify them. So I can write this as negative 24 x squared. I took x times x, which would make x squared. Because if you remember the way exponents work, 5 squared means 5 times 5. So it would make sense that x squared means x times x. And if I had 3 x's here, I would be writing x to the 3rd power. If I had 4 x's, I would be writing x to the 4th power. There's nothing to multiply the y by, so it stays just the same. And our answer is negative 24 x squared y. And so just to show you a little bit bigger what I did there when I multiplied the two x's together, is I did x times x, and I got an answer of x squared. Because x squared means x times x. Because if you recall correctly, 5 times 5 means 5 squared, or in other words, 25. Now if I had x times x times x, that would mean x to the 3rd power. In other words, I'm multiplying 3 x's together. Just like 5 to the 3rd power means 5 times 5 times 5. So when it comes to multiplying numbers and variables, just remember you always multiply the numbers together, and then you go and see if you have any letters that are the same that can be multiplied together. So do I have 2, 3, 4, 5 x's that can be multiplied together? Do I have a bunch of b's? Do I have a bunch of d's? So numbers first, letters second, and then when you're finished with all the multiplication, just kind of slide everything together. Because pretty much what you're doing when you have something like 2x times 4x is we're simplifying. We cannot solve this problem because we don't know what x is. So we're going to do as much to the problem as we can to make it as simple as possible. I know I can do 2 times 4, because remember, 2x is the same thing as 2 times x. 4x is the same thing as 4 times x. Okay? And with all multiplication, I can multiply in any order I want. So 2 times 4 is 8. X times x is x squared. I've done all the math I can. I've taken this equation here, or this expression here, and I've simplified it to this. I haven't found an actual numerical answer to the problem because I don't know what x is. So I've done as much as I can, and this is my stopping point. So that's it on Chapter 2, Section 4. This stuff, when you're doing x times x, is actually a little bit beyond Chapter 2, Section 4, but I just wanted to get some pre-exposure to that. So tune in for the next video on Chapter 2, Section 6.